It was widely accepted in medical science that pig tissues shared approximately 95% similarity with human tissues. This biological resemblance had long made pigs useful substitutes in anatomical studies, especially during periods when human dissection was prohibited. The story followed a young butcher named Hamaru, often called Maru, who worked daily with pigs. He was skilled and efficient, but his growing competence stirred resentment in his boss, a muscular man with 5 years of experience. One day, the boss tried to intimidate Maru, slamming an axe into the wall behind him and asking whether he truly believed he could replace someone with more experience. Maru, unfazed, told him to leave the axe alone, warning that if he didn't, there might not be a bench left to work on. The manager of the food livestock company, Han Junho, often expressed regret about selling meat, while Maru focused on his cutting tasks. Hong interrupted to compliment his knife skills, noting how impressive they were for someone who had only been with the company for a year. Maru asked him to stop disturbing him. Han complied, then turned his attention to Kim Yong, the company's accountant, who was busy devouring food. She seemed to enjoy her job immensely. Han demanded that she return to the office. Later, Han hugged Maru and claimed he cared deeply for him. Maru didn't believe it, recalling how poorly he was paid, how he was forced to work without breaks, and how Han often dragged him into sleepless nights. Maru added that he was frequently pulled around after hours and had to handle the slaughtering himself. Han justified his behavior by saying it was because he loved Maru and remembered his first day at work. Back then, Maru had appeared timid, holding a dagger with uncertainty, but he hadn't hesitated to complete the task. That moment convinced Hong that Maru was a natural-born butcher. Their conversation continued in the bathhouse, where Hong once again forced Maru to scrub his back. Maru, frustrated, warned that he expected to be paid for such tasks. When Hong asked if he truly needed money that badly, Maru confirmed. Hong then mentioned a lucrative job opportunity, not life-changing, but enough to help Maru move out of his basement room. Maru, eager for financial relief, asked about the job. Hong explained that he had studied in Japan and that Maru's next destination would be there. A few days later, Maru boarded a plane to Japan. The job was at an urban livestock farm where urgent labor was needed. 6 months passed, and Maru worked without a single day off. The conditions weren't much different from Korea, but he preferred enduring hardship in his home country. Despite claims of a labor shortage, Maru remained the only employee. A yakuza-like man watched him daily, smoking cigarettes. Maru cursed at him in Korean, knowing the man wouldn't understand. The Japanese man smiled, mistaking it for a greeting. Maru sensed something was wrong. He was instructed to separate only the ribs from pigs, discarding all other parts. The ribs felt unusually heavy, and he noticed a thin line on the bone, suggesting they had been cut and reattached. He suspected the ribs were being used to smuggle something. Still, he focused on finishing his work without drawing attention. Eventually, Maru called Hong, shouting that he couldn't take it anymore. He complained about the overtime, the strange tasks, and the yakuza member observing him. Hong dismissed his concerns, reminding him that he had always worked overtime in Korea. Maru insisted that the environment felt off. Hong argued that he had gone to great lengths to get Maru the job in Japan, knowing he needed money for his sister's school fees and his mother's car debt. He urged Maru to endure 1 more month, promising to bring him home afterward. With no other option, Maru agreed, though he resented being trapped by his family's financial burdens. The next day, Maru returned to work, determined to endure for the sake of money. Suddenly, someone called his name in Japanese. Maru struggled to remain composed as the man pinched his cheeks and praised his knife skills. Maru noticed a gun on the man's waist, confirming his suspicion that he was working for a Yakuza-affiliated company. The watchman announced he would leave early for his girlfriend's birthday, and his little brother would take over. However, the newcomer was clearly not young. He greeted Maru and mentioned that he had already collected the ribs. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. It was an earthquake. Maru clung to the countertop while the watchman explained the situation. The newcomer clutched the ribs tightly, but they slipped and fell, releasing a white powder into the air. Maru quickly covered his nose. The watchman tried to downplay the incident, claiming the powder came from the bones and that it was no big deal. Maru resumed work, and the men quickly collected the ribs. The newcomer asked if Maru was truly from Korea. When the watchman confirmed, the newcomer remarked that Maru probably wouldn't recognize the hallucinogenic substances or understand Japanese. The watchman yelled at him to be quiet, but Maru had understood everything. Realizing the mistake, the watchman pulled a gun on Maru. Everything happened quickly, and Maru couldn't believe his life might end after 6 months of hard labor. He refused to accept such a fate. Red liquid soon splattered through the air. Maru had originally accepted the butcher job because it was the only one available. On his first day, he had faced a pig without hesitation, impressing Hong, who noted that most people were overwhelmed after their first kill. But Maru was different. He continued without remorse, proving he was perfect for the role. Now, he had to use those same skills to survive. With a swift motion, he severed the watchman's arm using his sharp blade. The man screamed in pain, but Maru saw him as just another pig. He knew exactly where to strike and didn't hesitate. Even though it was a human dot after the watchman collapsed, the newcomer attacked Maru, slamming him against the wall and punching him repeatedly. He shouted that Maru had ruined the boss's proposal plans. Maru, blooded and bruised, realized he wouldn't survive unless he fought back. He used his dagger, but the wound barely affected the muscular man. The newcomer mocked the blades' weakness and began choking Maru as Maru lost consciousness. A flashback emerged. Hong had once taught him how to handle pigs with strong bones and thick fat. He said a traditional dagger was enough if the butcher could instinctively find the right path. At that moment, Maru saw the path Hong had described. He struck the enemies, ribs slicing through to the other side. Maru realized he was truly born to be a butcher. The newcomer collapsed on top of him. Maru pushed the body aside, stunned by what he had done. He repeated to himself that it was self-defense, but feared the police wouldn't believe him. Turning himself in wasn't an option. After surviving the brutal confrontation in Japan, Maru began contemplating his next move. He feared what might happen if the Yakuza discovered his escape. An idea crossed his mind. Perhaps he could erase all traces of the incident by setting the warehouse ablaze. But before he could act, someone burst into the room and opened fire. Maru immediately ran for cover, dodging bullets as the assailant chased him into the freezer. The attacker declared it a dead end and proclaimed that it was the end for the butcher. Silence fell over the room as the man crept slowly among the hanging pigs, searching for his target. Spotting a boot, he assumed he had found Maru and fired. Without hesitation, too late, he realized it was a trap. Maru had used the pigs to mislead the attacker. He shoved the carcasses toward the man, causing him to lose balance and fall. Seizing the moment, Maru swung his dagger and struck the man's shoulder. The attacker laughed, mocking Maru for not aiming at his throat. He raised his gun to fire, but nothing happened. His fingers couldn't move. This paralysis was no accident. Maru had remembered Chief Hong's teachings about a cluster of nerves in pigs that extended from the spinal cord to the forelimbs. Hong had explained that humans shared the same anatomy. A precise strike to that area would render a person immobile. Maru had once been skeptical of the claim, but now he knew Hong hadn't lied. The third attacker was neutralized. 6 hours. Later, Maru's plane landed in Korea. He breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that no Yakuza members had followed him. Before fleeing Japan, he had set fire to the warehouse, hoping it would destroy all evidence. With his tracks erased, he believed he could return to his normal life. As he approached his home, Maru noticed the lights were on. Assuming his family was awake, he smiled and entered, announcing that he had brought money and gifts, but the scene inside was horrifying. Furniture had been overturned, the house was in disarray, and his family was nowhere to be found. He called out for his mother and younger sister, also named Maru, but received no response. Suddenly, his foot brushed against something on the floor, a rib coated in the same white powder he had seen in Japan. It was a clear sign that something was terribly wrong. A voice then asked if he was happy to be home. Maru turned toward the sound and saw a group of unfamiliar men. Fear gripped him as he wondered if the Yakuza had taken his family. One of the men, wearing glasses, reached into his suit pocket. Maru braced himself, thinking it was a gun. Instead, the man revealed a badge from the Narcotics and Organized Crime Investigation Department. The officer, named Han Tae-sik, asked Maru to come with him. Confused, Maru asked why the narcotics team was in his house. He insisted he hadn't done anything illegal. Tae-sik raised his hand and clarified that the police weren't accusing him of anything. The house was in chaos because Maru's mother had reacted violently to their visit. Maru couldn't understand why his mother would behave that way. Tae-sik then revealed that Maru's mother was involved with narcotics. Maru had grown up in a troubled household, and even after the family's financial ruin, his mother continued spending recklessly. He had always seen her as immature, but never imagined she would use hallucinogens. The police reported that she had gone berserk, destroyed the house, and had to be hospitalized. Maru witnessed her trying to attack the doctors. Tae-sik presented evidence found in the house narcotics hidden inside pork ribs. This method of distribution had only recently emerged. He asked Maru if he knew when his mother began using the drugs. Maru said he didn't. The officer handed him a card and asked him to reach out if he remembered anything. After leaving the hospital, Officer Lee complained in the parking lot about Tae-sik smoking inside the car. Tae-sik explained that he couldn't open the window because smoking was prohibited in underground lots. Lee lost his temper, but Tae-sik calmly reminded him that the car was his, so he made the rules. Lee fell silent. Tae-sik then instructed him to investigate the boy named Maru. Meanwhile, Maru sat in the hospital, trying to make sense of everything. He was certain the Yakuza hadn't moved faster than him, so it made no sense for the drugs to reach his mother in just 6 hours. Then his phone rang. It was Chief Hong. Hong said he had heard about the fire at the Japanese factory and expressed concern. Maru replied that he was busy and would call later. But Hong revealed that he knew Maru had returned to Korea because of his mother's drug use. He laughed maniacally, leaving Maru stunned. Maru asked Hong to repeat himself. Hong questioned whether Maru had received the ribs he sent. When Maru didn't respond, Hong assumed he believed the ribs came from the Yakuza. Maru asked if he had done something wrong. Hong replied that he hadn't. He was a great butcher. He claimed to have prepared Maru's place long ago. Maru shouted, demanding to know what nonsense Hong was talking about. Hong then confessed that he had been the one sending drugs to Maru's family, including his mother. He threatened to send them to Maru's sister next, but only if Maru refused his offer. Hong said he wanted to use Maru's talent to expand his company and build a tower in Gangnam. He told Maru a car was waiting for him in the parking lot. From now on, Maru's work wouldn't be limited to pigs. Hong hung up, leaving Maru in silence. The protagonist felt himself sinking into darkness. The scene shifted to an unknown location. Two men argued about who would carry the pigs. The boy with glasses refused to help, but the man inside the truck unzipped a bag, revealing they weren't just transporting pigs. He pulled out several black bags, saying it was Hong's order. The man with the scarred face was Bake, the global head of livestock production. The boy with glasses was named Choi. He suggested hiring a new recruit to handle the hard labor. Bake reminded Choi that he had been his subordinate since losing a game of rock, paper, scissors, and therefore should be responsible for the bodies. Choi joked, asking if Bake was afraid of new recruits. Bake's veins bulged with anger, and the conflict escalated. He threatened to beat Choi, but Choi backed down and returned to the car. Night fell. Bake was sleeping peacefully when a cat woke him. He assumed the animal had come because of the smell of meat. After playing with it briefly, he realized Choi hadn't returned. Concerned, he went to check and found the door slightly ajar. Inside the dark room, the cat panicked and fled. Bake entered cautiously and was shocked by the destruction. He saw someone sleeping and assumed it was the new recruit. He asked where Choi was, worried that Chief Hong would scold him for the delay. When he received no answer, he nudged the figure with his foot only to discover it was Choi, dead with red liquid dripping from his mouth. Bake laughed bitterly, saying it looked like Choi had received a visit from the superiors. He remarked that this time, Choi hadn't been able to defend himself with his dagger. Bake believed his colleague deserved that fate. What he didn't know was that the person responsible for Choi's death was still in the room and now targeting him. Maru stepped forward, eyes filled with rage. Bake mocked him, calling him just another member of Generation Z as Maru closed the distance. Bake laughed at the sight of the new recruit. In the next moment, he blocked Maru's dagger with a power hammer. Maru was stunned. One counterattack had disarmed him. Bake brought the hammer close to Maru's face, interrupting his thoughts. Meanwhile, Chief Hong was calmly preparing a party with his subordinates. The employees discussed the latest developments, noting that Hong had sent Choi and Bake to retrieve the new recruit. Some thought it was excessive, but one guard defended the decision, saying the new recruit seemed different. The officials debated who was stronger. Some claimed Bake could easily defeat Choi. Jun Chek recalled working with Bake and remembered how everyone treated him as a legend. Once, Bake had defeated all the bullies and gangsters in an entire city using only his hands. Bake had once been a formidable fighter, but what truly elevated him to legendary status was the hammer gifted to him by Director Han. It was said to be invincible, an item that perfected his brute strength. From that moment on, Bake was known as the Unstoppable Bull. Or so people believed. During his battle with Maru, Bake swung the hammer with fury. Maru dodged but stumbled awkwardly to the ground. Bake was stunned that someone with such clumsy movements could have defeated Choi. Fueled by disbelief and excitement, he intensified his attacks. Maru continued to evade the hammer strikes, but Bake laughed maniacally as he chased him down. Eventually, he slammed Maru into a wall, demonstrating his superior strength and agility. Maru felt overwhelmed. Bake gave him no time to think, launching another wave of attacks. Though Maru managed to land a superficial strike with his broken dagger, he couldn't find a decisive opening. When he finally spotted a blind spot and aimed to end the fight, Bake stopped the dagger with his teeth. The sight was horrifying. Maru had never faced someone so seemingly invincible. But he refused to give up. Maru swung his dagger again, but it barely scratched Bake. The man mocked him, saying even a mosquito bite would hurt more. He decided it was time to end the fight. Maru narrowly avoided another hammer strike, but Bake's foot landed squarely on his face, sending him crashing to the ground. Bake dragged him by the leg and hurled him into the wall. As Maru lay stunned, Bake prepared another blow, but suddenly pain shot through his wrist. He realized too late that Maru had been targeting his vital points all along. Maru, now serious and cold, asked if anyone actually laughed at Baek's terrible jokes. The insult struck a nerve. Baek, who had always prided himself on his strength and charisma, felt deeply offended. He had introduced himself as a tourist and taken pride in it. Enraged, he vowed to finish off the rookie. Meanwhile, back at the party, Chief Hong was hanging a portrait of Maru on the wall. He admired the young butcher's looks, claiming Maru could be a celebrity if he wanted. The employees complimented the artwork and Hong agreed, wondering aloud how Baek was faring. He insisted that no one on his team could defeat the Bull. The staff agreed Baek was unmatched, but Hong's expression darkened. He demanded to know why no one was showing respect for Maru. The employees hesitated, unsure if it was appropriate to treat a 23-year-old butcher like a legend. Hong responded that while Baek was a Bull, Maru was a butcher, and that made all the difference. Hong's faith in Maru was justified. At that very moment, Baek was defeated by his own weapon. Maru had struck his vital points with precision, causing Baek to lose strength and drop the hammer. Maru stood over him, calm and calculating. Baek had assumed the strikes were random, but they had been part of a deliberate plan to immobilize his nerves. Maru referred to Baek as a cow and drove the dagger into him like a nail, ending the fight. Minutes later, Maru arrived at the party. Hong had prepared. A banner welcomed him as the new manager. The employees cheered his arrival, but Maru remained stoic. He pulled two badges from his shirt coys and Baek's sand threw them to the ground. The room fell silent. Maru called the fallen men pigs, triggering the guards to draw their weapons. He repeated the insult, calling them filthy pigs. The guards attacked in unison. Maru, now wielding a new dagger and Baek's hammer, was ready to take them all on. Hong watched from his chair, amused but aware that he needed to intervene. He pulled something from his pocket and shouted Maru's name, cheering him on. The employees were stunned. Hong had taught Maru to treat pigs like humans because even passive-looking animals could attack. Maru applied those teachings against the guards. He knocked them out with single blows, then turned his attention to the remaining men. Some guards were outraged that Baek's hammer was being used by a mere butcher. Maru, unfazed, took a deep breath and executed the second technique. Hong had taught him draining the red liquid from the body by piercing the jugular vein. The memory of the method was vivid in Maru's mind. The attacks were terrifying to onlookers, but he didn't stop there. He moved on to the third step, skin removal. He applied the technique to his enemies with surgical precision. Hong finally stepped in, telling Maru to save the remaining steps for later. The room was a mess. Maru noticed a few men still standing. The employees now understood that Maru truly deserved the title of manager. Maru considered finishing off the rest, but Hong stopped him, saying it was time to end the violence. Suddenly, Maru attacked Hong with the hammer. Hong blocked the blow with his bare hand and told Maru he understood his confusion, but he needed to learn to distinguish people from pigs. To prove his point, Hong shattered the powerful hammer with his hands. He tossed aside the cake and asked if Maru realized he had been killing people. After the confrontation, Hong told him to enjoy the party. But Maru was only interested in one thing: his sister's whereabouts. He threatened to kill Hong if he didn't answer. Just then, a female voice entered the room. Kim was devastated to see the cake ruined. Tears streamed down her face as she asked who was responsible. A guard tried to blame the boss, but Hong silenced her by stepping on her face. The blame shifted to Maru. Kim, enraged, fired a shot that narrowly missed Maru's head. He ducked and tried to assess the situation, but Kim didn't give him time. She closed the distance and kicked him in the chin. Maru hadn't expected her to be so skilled in hand-to-hand combat. Kim declared she would teach him a lesson for destroying her cake. Hong warned Maru to be careful. Kim was the best operative North Korea had ever trained, but the warning came too late. Maru was already in her crosshairs. The scene shifted to the past. Kim had once eliminated a gang of criminals and then calmly ate their food. Hong had been shocked to discover the culprit was a woman. When he asked if she was a soldier from the Southern Army, Kim denied it. Hong, seeing potential, offered her more food and suggested she start a mukbang broadcast. Kim didn't know what that was, so Hong showed her a video. He explained she could earn money just by eating. Her eyes lit up. Initially, she refused his offer, calling it a bribe, but she eventually agreed in exchange for unlimited food. A week later, Hong learned of a strange explosion in Gazin. Based on Kim's appearance, he confirmed she was responsible. He scolded her for failing to bring back a single intact popsicle. Back in the present, Maru narrowly avoided another shot. Fighting Kim was proving to be a challenge. Meanwhile, one of the guards, writhing in pain on the ground, took the opportunity to call his daughter. Upon learning she would be sleeping away from home, he jumped up, thrilled to have a night alone with his wife. Junchek was ready to try for another child. The other guards encouraged him to leave. Hong found the men chatting behind a white curtain and grew furious. He wanted them working overtime. As they argued, the fight between Kim and Maru raged on. Hong asked who they thought would win. The guards supported Kim. Hong agreed she was highly skilled, but reminded them that Maru was a prodigy. In just 1 year, Maru had mastered every technique taught to him. In a single month, he had executed the most difficult procedures. Hong had tried to slow his progress, but even tasks that would challenge a senior official took Maru less than a minute. Hong believed he had found the ideal man. He wasn't sure Kim would win. At that moment, Maru disarmed Kim, knocking the gun from her hand. Hong shouted in admiration, demanding his employees praise the butcher. They obeyed, but Kim wasn't finished. She drew a dagger hidden in her pants. The fight continued. But when it came to blades, no one surpassed Maru. Kim realized he was mimicking her movements. Hong watched with fascination. He believed in both fighters, but knew that in the end, agility would decide the victor. Kim could strike first, but Maru might still win. Hong waited, curious to see how it would end. As the tension between Maru and Kim reached its peak, Hong suddenly struck the ground between them, startling everyone in the room. The employees froze. In shock, Hong pointed to himself and called Maru over. Kim, visibly frustrated, demanded to know why the boss had chosen a brat for such a high position. Hong didn't answer her directly. Instead, he handed her a free food ticket to an upscale restaurant. Kim immediately chased after it, declaring she'd return in an hour. Everyone knew she would be back and she wouldn't come quietly. With Kim gone, Hong exhaled deeply and asked Maru how he was doing, but before he could finish, Maru lunged at him, demanding to know where his sister was. Hong shoved him back and questioned why he was so curious. That simple question caused Maru to freeze, overwhelmed by fear. Memory surfaced. He recalled the day at age 21 when he learned of his father's death. From that moment, he had become the head of the family. Desperate to support them, he accepted Hong's offer to work. Back then, he believed Hong cared for him like a son. He had even convinced himself that someone truly loved him. But now, seeing what had happened to his mother, Maru's patience snapped. He attacked Hong again, demanding answers. Hong welcomed the duel, using it as an opportunity to refine Maru's technique. He criticized the boy for failing to distinguish between real and fake openings in combat. You realized that exploiting Hong's weaknesses wouldn't work. He needed a new strategy, but before he could think, Hong interrupted, asking if Maru really believed he'd have time to strategize during a fight. With Maru's guard down, Hong struck a vital point between his legs. Maru screamed in pain. Hong expressed disappointment, saying he had expected more from his student. Maru struggled to stand, determined to fight back, but his efforts were futile. The employees watched in discomfort, knowing Hong was a monster in combat. Defeating him wouldn't be easy. Hong smiled as Maru continued his attacks. He explained that in a direct fight, his heavyweight class gave him a natural advantage. Maru would have to push himself harder. Feeling humiliated, Maru refused to abandon his dagger. It was as if his life depended on it. Suddenly, Hong hurled a table at him. Maru tried to use the moment for a sneak attack, but it failed. Hong adjusted his shoes and shoved Maru again. The butcher was struck repeatedly, unable to respond. Finally, Hong offered to explain why he had targeted Maru's family. But first, he asked how much Maru thought the hallucinogens he had burned in Japan were worth. The answer, $300 billion. That money was now gone, and Hong assured him the Japanese were furious. Hong claimed he had protected Maru from their wrath. That was the role of a loyal friend. But he hadn't hesitated to retaliate for the damage Maru had caused. What happened to Maru's family, he said, was simply the consequence. Now, the bodies in the room were proof of Hong's ability to recover the lost fortune. He extended his hand, offering Maru a partnership. If they worked together, the $300 billion could grow even larger. Hong walked away, saying Maru could begin once he had recovered. Maru finally broke his silence. He asked why Hong had done all this. Why hadn't he simply talked to him? Hong replied with a chilling smile, because this way was more interesting. Maru laughed bitterly, calling Hong a lunatic. Both men seemed to have lost their minds. But Hong's smile faded when Maru stood up. The butcher said he had once seen Hong as a mentor, even a father figure, but now he realized Hong had manipulated his family for amusement. Maru declared that Hong wasn't even worthy of being compared to a pig. He vowed to finish him off. His eyes made his intent clear. Hong invited him to do whatever he wanted, tearing off his clothes and exposing his body. He challenged Maru to judge whether he truly resembled a pig. He added that no matter how skilled a butcher was, confidence was essential. As they argued, Yoon-sik, one of the guards, wrote a farewell letter to his wife, revealing the location of his savings. He was convinced he wouldn't survive the chaos. The fight between Maru and Hong escalated. Hong expressed sadness at Maru's words, saying he had taught him everything. But Maru now used those teachings against his mentor. He waited for Hong to strike, then grabbed the axe handle and countered. The blade stopped inches from Hong's face. Hong didn't expect anything to happen, but Maru struck his chin, and blood splattered on the floor. The employees were stunned. Even Hong was shocked when his glasses shattered from the impact. Maru had turned the dagger and adjusted its position perfectly. He tried the attack again, but Hong kicked him away. The boss wouldn't allow another surprise. At first, he thought Maru was bluffing, but now he realized the boy was serious. Hong had no choice but to finish him first. Maru rose in pain, knowing escape was impossible. Hong appeared before him and asked if he could predict the direction of the next axe strike. The weapon came down with full force, but was blocked by the hammer Maru had taken from Bake. The axe shattered on impact. Maru seized the moment and struck Hong, just as he had struck Bake. The attack reminded Hong of the bull. The hammer seemed to amplify the user's rage. But what truly alarmed Hong was that Maru was using Koi's techniques moves he had copied in mere moments. Then Maru shifted to Kim's style. Yoon-sik watched in awe. He hadn't believed anyone could replicate the techniques of every opponent they'd faced. For the first time, he felt Hong might lose. Replicate the techniques of every opponent they'd faced. For the first time, he felt Hong might lose. Hong refused to accept defeat. He grabbed Maru's neck and delivered precise punches. He demanded to know how Maru dared call him a pig after he had cleaned up the mess in Japan. Then he hurled Maru across the room. Maru stood again, wounded, but resolute. Hong warned that he hadn't used his full strength yet and asked if Maru truly wanted to go all the way. Maru lowered his head, reflecting on everything. He discarded all positive memories of Hong to avoid hesitation, but one thing remained: his will to live. The two prepared for a final clash. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. Kim burst into the room, demanding to know what was happening. She froze, and her gun dropped to the floor. Hong calmly welcomed his noisy child. He tossed a key to the office on the ground and told her all. Her contracts were inside the safe. Kim stammered, asking what was going on. Hong instructed her to take half the money, the rest was just mirrors. Then, Hong collapsed. Maru had eliminated him with a dagger. Tears welled in Maru's eyes. He told Kim to act quickly if she wanted to retaliate. Hong had once been an orphan, fighting for scraps among the desperate. In that world, only the strongest survived. He lived like a king in a pigsty, treating humans like animals. Hong hunted for food, defeated others, and was hated, but he believed it was necessary for survival. Eventually, he was selected by the pigsty's owners as one of the best survivors. He used the opportunity to eliminate the most powerful member of the group. People were shocked when they saw him wield a dagger. He was called a pig, and the superiors tried to kill him. But Hong escaped. Years later, he returned to the iron cages where he had once been imprisoned. He had spent his childhood there, fighting and serving. He came back because he craved the adrenaline. Many times, he nearly died, but he always returned to the place he called home. One day, Hong realized he could no longer distinguish humans from pigs. It saddened him. When he returned to the superior's room, they called him a pig. Hong remained silent. Then they beat him. He apologized to a woman, saying the servant hadn't acted properly. Years ago, during a tense meeting with the superiors, Hong had been slapped across the face by the president and ordered to continue, as if nothing had happened. In that moment, Hong realized he would never be treated as a human by those in power. Overcome by rage, he stood up and declared that he would become the king of pigs. Security guards rushed to protect the president, but Hong's target wasn't her, it was the man who had insulted him. Hong struck the man and stole his glasses. Surprisingly, the president found the scene amusing and told Hong she would give him a chance. That day marked the birth of Hong's empire. In the years that followed, Hong dedicated himself to raising and training his puppies. The first was Kim, then came Maru. Hong was proud of his creations and dreamed of the day he would be seen as human again. But everything changed when he received a call about the chaos Maru had caused. Though Hong resolved the issue and negotiated with the Japanese, the president demanded that Maru be discarded. Hong protested, arguing that a deal had already been made. The president warned him that if he didn't comply, he would be sent back to the pigsty. After the call ended, Hong slammed his fist on the table and vowed to protect Maru. That was why he had tried so desperately to convince the boy to work with him, hoping the president would reconsider. But when Maru began to see Hong as a pig, it shattered the boss's pride. He couldn't bear being viewed that way by someone he had raised and cared for. Despite his fury, Hong couldn't bring himself to kill Maru. The boy was one of his own. Before dying, Hong asked Maru if he now saw him as human. He urged him to live as a human, not a pig. Then, with a deep wound across his chest, Hong passed away, choosing to die as a man rather than destroy his own creation. Moments later, a man approached Hong's lifeless body. It was Choi Ki-jong, managing director of the livestock group. He expressed disappointment that he hadn't been the one to finish Hong off. As a trophy, he took Hong's eye and wished him peace. Ki-jong called the president to confirm Hong's death, but reported that the safe under Hong's protection had vanished. He assured her that the killer, no matter where he fled, would be found and torn apart. The safe would eventually be recovered. Thanks to security footage, Ki-jong knew exactly who was responsible: Maru. The cameras had captured his face, along with Kim's and the 3 gangsters who had served Hong. Kim, stunned by what she had witnessed, couldn't believe Maru had defeated Hong. Her instincts screamed at her to flee. Instead of attacking, Kim raised her hands and surrendered. Maru suspected she was only trying to be eliminated faster, but the gangsters protected her. One of them, the bespectacled man, warned that reinforcements from headquarters were on their way. If they didn't escape now, they'd all be wiped out. They urged Maru to join them as a team. He agreed, but only after demanding to know where his sister was. The gangsters turned to Kim, who had been in charge of the girl. Kim hesitated, feigning ignorance, but eventually recalled the events. Han had asked her to take Naro to a restaurant while he dealt with Maru. Kim complied, and the two enjoyed a meal, but when it came time to pay, the card was declined. Kim left Naro to wash dishes while she went to retrieve another card. That was when she returned to find the party in chaos and the cake destroyed, leading to her fight with Maru. Later, the gangsters encouraged Kim to jump from a helicopter to search for Naro. She was terrified. They questioned how she had ever qualified for special forces. Kim admitted she wasn't ready. But Maru's determined gaze was enough to push her out of the aircraft. Maru's plan was clear: rescue his sister and mother as soon as possible. But he knew the World Group would be coming. The next day, a house collapsed, and Officer Tasek was called to investigate. Neighbors had reported strange noises. The ground was stained with a suspicious red liquid, which was quickly identified. Tasek asked if there were any victims, but his colleague said no bodies had been found. Tasek decided they should return to the hospital where Maru's mother had been staying. But upon arrival, Maru and his allies were informed that she had been discharged early, taken by men in suits. Maru's expression darkened. That wasn't the only bad news. Yeonzik received a call from Kim, who reported that Naro had disappeared from the restaurant, also taken by men in suits. Maru realized his family was being used as leverage. Without hesitation, he fled the hospital. Yeonzik tried to stop him, warning that the World Group's headquarters was extremely dangerous. Just then, a man entered the hospital, causing Maru to freeze. In the lobby, a man with an eye patch greeted Officer Tasek. It was Ki-jong. Tasek recognized him immediately, recalling the chaos he had caused. He accused Ki-jong of interfering in people's lives. Ki-jong, now a senior administrative director, dismissed the accusation and said he was simply visiting someone. As they walked in opposite directions, Ki-jong told Tasek to mind his own business. Suddenly, one of Ki-jong's lackeys ran up, shouting that Maru had returned to the hospital room. Ki-jong silenced him by sticking a finger in his mouth and breaking his teeth. Tasek remarked that Ki-jong's subordinate talked too much. Ki-jong responded with a threat, saying they'd meet again at Tasek's funeral. Unfazed, Tasek replied that his donation to the funeral would be generous. Ki-jong left the hospital, furious that Maru had moved so quickly. It was clear someone was helping him. Back in the hospital room, Maru stood motionless as a man in a suit entered and greeted him politely. The man asked Maru to get into the car, but Maru suspected he was involved in his family's abduction. Without hesitation, he drew a knife from his jacket and threatened the man. The newcomer bowed his head in respect and apologized. He explained that the president was waiting in the car and would clarify everything. A woman with black hair then stepped out and introduced herself as Shin, president of the Charlotte Hotel. Maru shouted at her, demanding to know where his family was. His gangster allies assured him everything was fine. The bespectacled servant addressed Maru as manager and confirmed that his mother was safe. Yeonzik asked why they had allied with the Charlotte Group. The servant explained that the World Group had moved too quickly, leaving them no choice but to seek Charlotte's help. Maru questioned whether Charlotte was truly different, given that they had taken his family without permission. The servant showed him hospital security footage. Men from the World Group had stormed the facility, searching for Maru and his family. Without Charlotte's intervention, they would have been captured. Though hesitant, Maru understood the truth. Shin asked him again to get into the car, promising to take him to his family. She explained that the Charlotte Group specialized in pharmaceuticals, hotels, department stores, petrochemicals, and finance. The World Group, on the other hand, focused on security, defense, trade, distribution, and construction. Both corporations wore the mask of legitimacy, but waged a brutal war behind the scenes. One man had once ended that war with brute force. After his victory, Charlotte was divided into two factions: those who wanted to surrender to the World Group and those who wanted to preserve Charlotte's independence. Shin belonged to the latter. She shared Charlotte's history with Maru to be transparent, but Maru urged her to be direct. Shin explained that even with Hong gone, the World Group remained overwhelmingly powerful. Protecting Maru's family and escaping their reach would be impossible alone. She wanted to help him using Charlotte's resources. Suddenly, one of the gangsters screamed and pointed outside. A white car had blocked their path. The driver swerved, but lost control. Everyone inside was thrown as the vehicle crashed into a road barrier. Shin opened her eyes, terrified, but she realized she had been protected. Maru had shielded her during the impact. He asked if she was okay. At first, Maru thought the attackers were members of the World Group. After the crash, Shin warned Maru that the attackers were likely from the opposing faction within Charlotte. The group had split in two, and her older brother, Anju, was leading the side that wanted to hand Charlotte over to the World Group. As she spoke, she noticed a stream of blood running down Maru's forehead and gently tried to wipe it away. With a soft smile, Shin asked Maru to become her sword, her protector. Whoa, how? In return, she promised that Charlotte would safeguard his family. Maru opened the car door and told her she would have to prove she could keep that promise. Only then would he become her sword. The scene shifted to Ki Jong. His men stood in formation as he walked slowly toward the temple where Hong's funeral was being held. Inside, the president of the World Group, Dane, demanded answers about the delinquents. Ki Jong reported that one had escaped, but he had found someone else. Meanwhile, Kim was searching for Maru's sister, Naro. She knew Maru wouldn't rest until she was safe. Her first instinct was to destroy the restaurant where Naro had last been seen, but she was stopped by several men in suits, agents sent by Ki Jong. Elsewhere, the group that had intercepted Maru's car prepared for battle, armed with iron rods and daggers. They were led by Biomo, Charlotte's head of pharmaceuticals. He declared that Anju would be pleased once his sister was eliminated. When they confronted Maru, they asked if he was Shin's lover. Before they could say more, Maru swiftly defeated them. Even he was surprised by how easily they fell. He realized that the enemies he had faced recently were far stronger than these. Common thugs. Within seconds, only Biomo remained. His hands trembled, but he tried to fight. It didn't take long before he met the same fate. Shin stepped out of the car and approached Maru with quiet grace. He looked at her and said he had proven his worth. Now it was her turn to prove she could protect his family. As silence fell, Maru asked how they would reach his mother with the car destroyed. Shin smiled and revealed she had prepared a helicopter. Before they departed, Shin promised to show the full extent of her power. Their next destination was Hong's funeral, held at a temple by the World Group. Monks chanted farewell mantras as the president gazed solemnly at the body of her old friend. Inside the temple, Ki Jong was alerted by a servant that Maru had arrived. Dressed in a suit provided by Shin, Maru had come to pay his respects. Back at the restaurant, Kim had defeated the World Group agents and stolen their money. She received a call informing her that Maru had gone to Hong's funeral. She was told to follow him, but warned that it was easier to become food than to eat it in that place. At the temple, World Group members began to surround Maru. They couldn't believe that someone so small had defeated Han. It didn't make sense. Maru didn't even look the part. Shin asked how Maru was feeling. He replied that he was anxious to see how she would prove her worth. Suddenly, a man arrogantly placed a hand on Maru's shoulder and mocked him for attending the funeral with Charlotte's impure wife. This man was Min Seok. He accused Charlotte of supporting Maru from the beginning. Before the situation escalated, Ki Jong shoved Min Seok aside and demanded respect as the managing director of World Group Security. Two other officials, Wound and Shield, joined the conversation, eager to get involved. Maru discreetly checked his pocket for his dagger, ready to defend himself. But Shin stepped in front of him and asked what the World Group hoped to gain by harming Maru. The officials responded that they were defending Chief Hong's honor and planned to eliminate the brat. Shin challenged their sense of honor, pointing out that Hong had been defeated in a fair one-on-one fight. No one had dared attack him while he was alive, but now they felt brave in numbers. Her words angered the officials, and they insulted her. Unfazed, Shin declared that no matter how divided Charlotte was, she would not let anyone harm her people. If Maru were attacked, Charlotte would retaliate, and the consequences would be devastating for the World Group. She left the decision to them, but made it clear they would regret it. To provoke them further, Shin insulted their mothers. Even Maru was surprised by her boldness. Just then, someone clapped to get her attention. President Dane stepped forward and complimented Shin's eloquence, saying she spoke just like her father. Dane studied Maru's face and confirmed he was the one who had killed Hong. Maru felt uneasy under her gaze. She smiled and told the World Group officials to follow her, leaving Maru alone with Shin. Maru asked who the woman was. Shin explained that Dane was the president of the World Group and the person Maru should be most cautious of. Together, Maru and Shin entered the funeral hall. A massive image of Hong dominated the room. Maru felt a pang of sorrow. Despite everything, Hong had been his mentor, but he had crossed a line by endangering Maru's family. Maru remembered Hong's final words, to live as a human, not a pig. He bowed respectfully and wondered why Hong had allowed himself to be killed. He didn't have the answer, but he vowed to follow Hong's advice and discover it for himself. Shin reminded him that from the moment he crossed the temple's threshold, he was her sword. Maru smiled and left the temple with her. They boarded the helicopter and flew away. Ki Jong lit a cigarette. Seething with rage, he vowed to destroy them both. What had happened that day had pushed him over the edge. A week later, Charlotte Hotel employees welcomed President Shin. The manager complained about the noise. Maru's three gangster allies were trying to open Hong's safe, but he had forgotten to leave the key. They were determined to break it open. Shin told the manager to ignore them. She couldn't do much. They were Maru's friends. The manager agreed, but pointed out another issue. The woman Shin had brought was eating all the guests' food. Shin admitted they were a burden, but said the hotel hadn't been this lively in a long time. She chose to ignore Kim's behavior. Shin entered the VIP room, where Maru's family was waiting. She greeted Nara warmly. The girl asked why they were there. Maru gestured with a nod, indicating that he didn't want to explain. Shin understood his family had been endangered because of him. She reassured them that Maru had done nothing wrong and they shouldn't worry. Maru's mother thanked Shin for her help and asked her to take care of her son. Shin promised she would. Suddenly, someone burst into the room. At first, Shin thought it was one of Maru's allies, but the manager revealed it was her brother, Anju, the vice president of Charlotte. He was sitting in the hotel lobby, surrounded by beautiful women. Meanwhile, at the police station, Detective Tasek was investigating Hong's death. He pinned photos of potential suspects on the criminal wall. Hong was suspected of distributing narcotics. Evidence pointed to a Japanese workshop believed to be a supply center. It had been burned down. A week earlier, a 50-year-old woman had died from hallucinogen use. Her house collapsed, and she vanished without a trace. Tasek also recalled suspicious behavior at the hospital. World Group agents had been searching for Maru. The detective wasn't sure if Maru was the cause or the victim, but he was clearly the common thread in all these incidents. The only new information was that Maru had appeared at Hong's funeral with a woman. Tasek paused his thoughts and examined a photograph of Maru and Shin at the funeral. He had finally identified the woman. Detective Tae-sik froze when a fellow officer revealed that the woman seen with Maru was none other than Shin, the president of the Charlotte Hotel. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Shin struggled to maintain composure. In front of her brother, Anju, he mocked her, suggesting she stop working and enjoy herself. Maru asked if he should finish him off, but Shin calmly said everything was under control. She then poured an entire bottle of wine over Anju and insulted him. She admitted she had always suspected her brother would align with feudal interests, but she hadn't expected him to become a lapdog for the World Group. Her words were aimed at Ki-jong, who was seated nearby in the hotel lobby. Shin reminded Anju that Charlotte belonged to their family, and their father, though still alive, had chosen her as his successor. She accused Anju of coveting the presidency and betraying the family by inviting an enemy into their territory. Anju lowered his head at her accusations, but quickly regained his smug demeanor. He joked that it was unfair for him to drink alone and forced the women around him to join. Shin watched silently as her brother spiraled. Suddenly, he hurled the wine bottle at her and sneered, claiming she was acting like a president when she was merely a successor. With a twisted smile, he revealed that their father had become a vegetable, meaning Shin wouldn't inherit anything until he was buried. Shin didn't flinch. She told her brother he could act however he wanted until then, but warned him to watch his back because an attack could come from any direction. Their tense exchange was interrupted by laughter. Ki-jong dismissed their argument as childish. Shin forced a smile and told him to leave, reminding him that he was in Charlotte territory. Ki-jong, amused at being called a dog again, reached toward Shin's face, threatening to teach her manners. But before he could touch her, Maru drew his dagger and slashed Ki-jong's hand. With a cold voice, he warned the man to leave or the next funeral would be his. Ki-jong looked at his bleeding hand and smirked. He found it interesting that his next opponent might finally be worthy. He wiped the blood and said he was looking forward to the duel. Then, without warning, he attacked Maru with his bare hands. His nails left a gash on Maru's arm. Even though Maru had blocked the strike, Maru was stunned. Ki-jong hadn't used a weapon, yet the wound was real. His grip was monstrous, though still not on par with Hong's. The fight erupted in the hotel lobby. Shin apologized to the guests and asked them to evacuate. She promised compensation for the disruption. As the guests left, Shin turned her attention to the battle. She worried that Maru might not be able to handle the World Group's enforcer. The fight was fierce. Ki-jong dodged Maru's dagger and quickly realized that his opponent had inherited Hong's techniques, but he wasn't convinced it would be enough. Then Maru surprised him by using Baek's moves, followed by Kim's. Ki-jong understood that Hong had played a pivotal role in shaping this butcher. He had passed down a wide array of skills. Still, Maru was pushed back. Ki-jong lit a cigarette and mocked him, calling him pathetic and questioning what Hong had ever seen in him. Maru hadn't expected his opponent to be so powerful, but he remained confident. Ki-jong, growing tired of the fight, decided to end it. With a single blow to the chest, he immobilized Maru. As the boy struggled to breathe, Ki-jong remarked that Hong must have allowed himself to be killed because Maru clearly wasn't strong enough to do it. Hearing his mentor's name again, Maru lost his temper. He charged with his dagger, but Ki-jong caught him mid-run, spun him in the air, and slammed him to the ground. As Maru writhed in pain, Ki-jong admitted he understood why Hong had liked him. He had spirit. Maru retorted that he had heard plenty about Ki-jong too. His mentor had called him a one-eyed wretch. The insult hit Ki-jong hard. Enraged, he punched Maru in the stomach and unleashed a flurry of blows. He screamed that he had been the only one worthy of killing Hong, and Maru had ruined his dream. Maru lay motionless, absorbing the punishment. He had vowed to protect his family, but things were spiraling out of control. He wasn't sure how many more enemies like Ki-jong were out there, or if he could even protect himself. Ki-jong's punches grew more violent, encouraged by Anju, but the joy on his face vanished when a figure appeared, pointing a gun at his head. It was Detective Tae-sik. He calmly warned that he would fire if the assault continued. Ki-jong surrendered, claiming he was merely teaching the boy a lesson. Anju cursed the police for interfering, but was restrained. Tae-sik noted that Ki-jong seemed to have aged after all. He had just been struck in the chest by a brat. Ki-jong hadn't noticed the woman before Tae-sik pointed her out. He realized Maru had copied his own technique immediately after being hit. That made the boy interesting, worthy of being his student. Maru was handcuffed and informed he was under arrest for suspicion of murder. He was stunned, unable to comprehend what was happening. Shin promised to do everything in her power to get him released. Maru thanked her and asked her to look after his family. Ki-jong mocked him for still worrying about his family. He said Maru had a long way to go before becoming like Hong. Maru replied that no matter how long it took, he would destroy Ki-jong with his bare hands. Ki-jong smiled and said he couldn't wait. Later, Shin's office was stormed by Maru's 3 gangster allies. They had heard about his arrest and were furious. Shin explained that the police had ignored the chaos caused by Vice President Anju and arrested only Maru. She suspected the World Group had infiltrated the police. The gangsters vowed to rescue Maru at any cost. He was their manager now. Kim, however, refused to help. She had lost her job because of him and saw no reason to get involved. But as she continued eating, she learned that her privileges at the hotel were thanks to Maru. She confronted Shin, who confirmed that Kim was only being treated well because she was part of Maru's group. Realizing this, Kim changed her mind. She declared she would bring Maru back herself. At the police station, Maru waited anxiously for Shin. Detective Tae-sik broke the silence, asking if it was a coincidence that Maru's name was tied to the hallucinogenic ribs and Hong's murder. He added that traces of narcotic substances had been found in Maru's home linked to World Group workers. Before Maru could respond, Tae-sik clarified that he only wanted to help. Just then, Superintendent Ki-yu entered with a plate of food. He noted that Maru had been sitting in the narcotics department 4 hours without eating and offered him a meal. Tae-sik told Ki-yu to leave the plate and go. Ki-yu whispered that the mayor was furious they had arrested someone without clear evidence. Tae-sik said he needed to step out and left Ki-yu in charge. Ki-yu smiled kindly and told Maru to eat slowly. He promised not to ask any questions. Maru assumed Shin had already taken steps to help him. Meanwhile, in President Dane's office, she expressed her frustration. She called it absurd that a man had fought publicly and that Charlotte's vice president had openly flirted with women in her company. These incidents had damaged Charlotte's reputation. Dane warned that if Shin and Anju continued causing trouble, she would destroy them both. The media had already begun questioning Shin's leadership. For now, Shin would face serious challenges moving forward. Following the chaos at the Charlotte Hotel, President Dane declared that Anju would temporarily take control of the board of directors. She instructed the men to stay out of trouble and avoid further embarrassment. Meanwhile, at the police station, Superintendent Ki-yu grew increasingly aggressive during Maru's interrogation. When the butcher refused to answer his questions, Kiyu shoved Maru's head into a bowl of soup, demanding information about his ties to the World Group. A few minutes later, 3 men entered the narcotics department. Their leader, a white-haired man, was informed by his footman that all security cameras had been disabled. They had 30 minutes of complete privacy. The leader smiled and opened the interrogation room door. Immediately noticing the strong scent of blood, he assumed Maru had been beaten, but was surprised to find Kiyo sitting calmly at the table. Confused, the leader questioned how Maru could eliminate a detective so fearlessly. Regardless, he ordered his men to find the boy. He didn't care if Maru was missing limbs, he just needed him alive. The scene flashed back to 30 minutes earlier. Maru had initially mistaken Kiyu for one of Shin's envoys. But it quickly became clear that Kiyu was a World Group infiltrator, disguised in a stolen police uniform. His goal was to humiliate Maru before releasing him, all while waiting for reinforcements. Kim had been checking interrogation rooms and finally reached the last one, where she found Maru already free from his handcuffs and engaged in a fight with the superintendent. She yelled at him for attacking someone from the narcotics department, but Maru calmly explained that the man was a World Group agent and that more were on their way. Maru asked Kim to help frame the incoming agents, making it look like the World Group was responsible for the chaos. Kim protested, saying she had come to help, not clean up his mess. Maru reminded her that crossing the North Korean border had been far worse. He offered her unlimited food for 2 months if she helped. Kim was about to refuse, but when the offer changed to lifetime free meals at the Charlotte Hotel, she agreed. Back in the present, the white-haired leader ordered his men to search for Maru, confident he hadn't gone far. Kim, hiding in the ceiling, waited until the coast was clear before dropping to the floor. She began planning how to fulfill Maru's request, but before she could act, a man kicked a metal door into her face. He laughed and mocked her, saying her scent had given her away. He joked about her outfit being a police cosplay. Kim retorted that he was still as disgusting as ever. She pulled a gun and fired. Detective Tae-sik and Officer Lee heard the shot. Lee urged Tae-sik to leave the station, but Tae-sik remained calm and answered a phone call. On the other end, Maru introduced himself. Tae-sik was surprised, thinking Maru had fired the shot. He ordered him to stay put, but Maru revealed he had already escaped. Relieved that Kim had started her part of the plan, Maru explained that the World Group had infiltrated the interrogation room. He had survived thanks to Detective Kiyu, which meant there was a spy within the police. Maru told Tae-sik he couldn't trust him yet and would only share information once that trust was rebuilt. Meanwhile, Kim continued firing into the ceiling to draw attention. She shouted that World Group agents were attacking. The white-haired leader, momentarily confused, felt both attracted to and enraged by Kim. They began fighting. Kim landed a punch to his mouth and told him to be grateful. The leader didn't seem to mind being hit, which disgusted her further. And that's where we'll leave our blood-soaked soap opera for today, folks. Maru's slicing, Kim's kicking, and Ki-jong's still out here playing villain bingo like it's a full-time job. If you thought your family dinners were awkward, just be glad no one's throwing you through windows or detonating hotels. This has been Luna Dreams, where we recap manga so intense, even your therapist needs a therapist. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell because missing an episode here is like dodging a dagger in a council meeting. Unlikely and painful. Until next time, keep dreaming. Just maybe not in buildings rigged to explode.